Hey, Satya, one thing everybody's talking about these agents, and if you just kind of think forward in your mind a bit, you can imagine all kind of players wanting to enact action on other apps and other data that may be on a system. And, Microsoft's in an interesting position because you control the Windows ecosystem, but you have apps on like the iPhone ecosystem or the Android ecosystem. And how do you think about, and this is, partially a terms of service question, partially a partnership question, will Apple allow Microsoft to control other apps on iOS? Will Microsoft let ChatGPT instantiate apps and take data from apps on Windows OS? I mean, you get the question. It goes all the way to when you start thinking about search and commerce, like, will Booking.com let Gemini run transactions on it without their permission or knowledge?
Yeah, I think that this is the most interesting question, right? I mean, to some degree, it's unclear exactly how this will happen. There is a slight, very old school way of thinking about some of this, which is, if you remember, how did business applications of various kinds manage to do interop, right? They did manage that interop using connectors, and people had connector licenses. So there was a business model that emerged, right? I mean, SAP was one of the most classic ones where, you could say, hey, you can access SAP data as long as you had connectors. So there's a part of me which says something like that will emerge as when agent to agent interface occurs. It's unclear exactly what happens in consumer, because consumer, the value exchange was a lot of, advertising and traffic and what have you. Some of those things go away in an agentic world. So I think the business model is slightly unclear to me on the consumer side. But on the enterprise side, I think what will happen is everybody will say, hey, in order for you to either action into my action space or to get data out of my sort of schema, so to speak, there is some kind of an interface to my agent that is licensed, so to speak. And I think that that's a reason, like today, for example, when I go to Copilot at Microsoft, I have connectors into Adobe, into my instance of SAP, obviously our instance of CRM, which is Dynamics. So it's fascinating. In fact, when was the last time any of us really went to a business application, right? We license all these SaaS applications, we hardly use them, and somebody in the org is sort of inputting data into it. But in the AI age, the intensity goes up because all that data now is easy, right? Your query away. I can literally say, hey, I'm meeting with Bill. Tell me about all the companies that Benchmarks invested in. It's both taking the web, anything that's in my CRM database, collating it all put together, giving me a note, what have you. So to some degree, all that, I think, can be monetized by us and by even these connectors.
But more explicitly, like the thing that could happen really quickly, because there's been talk about it, like would you allow ChatGPT on the Windows OS to just start opening random apps and taking...
Now, that's an interesting one, right?